Welcome back, folks. Episode 27, Get a Grip on Lighting. On today's show, we have Cory Schneider. Cory is the president of the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Yeah, it's a rotating position. Greg's been the president. They didn't let me be the president. They thought I was crazy. But anyway, Cory came on to tell us a little bit about Nailed education, about the future of Nailed, how he's the greatest LS1 deployer of all time, Greg.
Absolutely. Yeah, he has a system in place and it works, man.
Yeah, he's incredible. Cory's a really, really smart guy. Pleasure to know him, pleasure to work with him in Nailed and so on. So thanks for coming on, Cory. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gregor.
Our friends at Keystone.
Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com. KeystoneTech.com, man. They've been around forever. Great company. Love Fred, Ira, and Josh and the crew there. Scotty, throw up the Keystone website there for our YouTube watchers. Greg, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, this product here, their emergency product, I want to touch on it. I've mentioned before, but I do a lot of Keystone lighting products.
Really?
In my business. I do. Because they do it right.
Hey.
And here's why. So a lot of times you get into a situation where you're doing a lighting retrofit. Like in this example I'm going to talk about, they had fluorescent tubes and they wanted to bypass the ballast and do a type B LED tube. Keystone has the greatest offerings of that by far of anybody. They have a low watt option, a mid watt, and a high watt lumen wise. So it's just like the old T8s where you have a 32 watt, a 28 watt, and a 25 watt. They have that covered. They have every Kelvin temperature covered. They have single end and now they have double end. So everything's covered. There's times when you get into a fixture where you need to do double ended, like a paint booth, for example, where you can't go mess with that socket that's in pros. They can do double ended. So you get into a lot of these lighting retrofits, you count the fixtures, there's hundreds, there's thousands, whatever there is, hopefully thousands.
Yeah.
And when you get into it, you don't always know the emergency lighting in the place. That's a question that I've learned to ask over the years, because if you don't, what happens is you retrofit a fixture, then all of a sudden you find out, well, that has emergency backup.
And
so what do you do?
Come on, yeah.
What do you do in that situation? You can't put a direct wire tube in, or at least you couldn't in the past, because you needed that ballast compatible lamp to work. So there were times before new products came out where we'd do a type B retrofit and then one fixture that had emergency would have a type A, or it would stay fluorescent.
Yeah.
Now with this new product that Keystone has, they have a couple new options, but the one is that kit that you can see on screen.
Sure.
Where it has the LED modules, it has a driver, so that actually gets implemented into the fixture. You can maintain the type B or the ballast bypass, and you have that emergency backup. There's a new option they have too now, where it actually will fire one of the type B lamps. It's like a driver that does it for you. So
go to KeystoneTech.com.
Awesome solution.
That's KEYSTONETECH.com. Do they have a Smart Safe? They also name their stuff really good.
They do.
Smart Safe. So without further ado, we give you Cory Schneider, president of Nailed, on episode 26, Get a Grip on Lighting. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, Cory.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Doing well. Say hi to Greg Eric.
Good. Greggy, how are you?
I'm good, Cory. It's been a week since I've seen you, but always good to see you on camera, man.
Looking handsome.
You too.
So,
thank you.
Cory's the president of Nailed. Cory, where do you see Nailed going in the next 3 to 4 years?
That's a tough question. The industry is constantly changing. I don't really know where I see Nailed going. I don't have a good answer. I think you might want to cut this part out. But,
I think that's interesting. I think it's funny because when it comes back to this business, so we interviewed David Nathaniel.
Yeah.
And so his lamp and ballast business has dropped by 65 or 75% in the last 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had a business where whether it was CFLs, whether it was, even the CFL revolution, even the, T12, the T8, T5 or whatever, the business wasn't totally disrupted or revolutionized. It was still the same business, like that pseudo subscription style of business where every month you knew how many lamps you were going to sell within 10% of the, whatever. Now, nobody has no idea. Nobody has any idea what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and I think that ties into what you said, Cory, is everybody's uncertain. I don't think it's hard to plan for 5 years when you don't know what's going to happen next year. I think there's a lot of good things Nailed is doing, though, to prepare for it, and that's really what, I think everybody's got to do. And Nailed is really strong in education, and I guess why don't you touch on some of what Nailed.
Well, I was going to say, like, the release of LS controls is so timely.
Yeah.
And, Cory, you're probably the best in our group at educating his people, the most committed to it. Tell us a little bit about your educational process for your people and why it's important to you. Why is it important to you?
Yeah, it's hugely important. So I met with Paul Hafner, who you guys interviewed on the podcast, I don't know, about 6-7 years ago. And there was this LS1 program, and I gave it to my employee, and, it's like an 8-hour course or whatever. And the guy went home, and 2 days later he said, I know lighting. I'm a genius. He took the LS1 and he
watch
took it
your
and
desk. Don't hit your desk because your camera's going all over the place. But carry on. Yep. He came home and he came back to work. Yep.
Came back to work. I gave the guy the LS1, and 2 days later, the guy said, "Oh, I took LS1. I'm a lighting genius." And I said, "Oh, you don't know anything. You don't know what a ballast is, And so then I went to the conference and I talked to Paul, and he said, "Well, why don't you turn it into like a class where you talk to the guy after each module and ask him how he's doing?" And so I piloted a pilot program, and I had about 4 of my guys in the class, and I. Every week I met with them. They said I watched 1 hour of the LS1, do the exercises in the workbook, and basically, I turned it into like an 8-week course or a 10-week course, and I was able to take guys from Walmart bag checkers or Circle K store clerks, and within 8 weeks, I had them into actual lighting people that knew something. So for me, I've taken anybody from my driver, my accountant, to anybody, to get them to, care about lighting and understand lighting through the LS1 training program. So it's been a huge impact for my company.
There's how many modules in it? Do you want to just break it down a little? I know we know about it, but why don't you, for the listeners?
So it's basically the first module is the get to know you, tell you about the industry, tell you about the nail, tell you about the program. The second module is all the sources. So, HID, incandescent, fluorescent, and LED and induction, I guess there's a little bit of. And then the third module is the color temp. What is CRI and color temperature? How to, what they are. The fourth module is how the eye works, so how you see it. Then the fifth module is LED, just basically LED technology. The sixth module is filament technology to LED. Then the seventh is fluorescent to LED, and then the eighth is HID to LED. And throughout that teaches you tips and tricks on how the stuff works. And so basically, I would take ballast and put them on the table and show the guys how to wire it, or I'd take a catalog and tell them how to read it. So it teaches your guys how to actually sell parts and pieces.
Do you feel that each module takes a week, or is there some that take 2 weeks, or what do you think is the best?
Some that take 2-3 weeks, yeah. So after I've done this about 20 times, I've modified the, my training process for these guys. And I've actually taught the guys from the first class are actually now teaching the class, so I don't have to teach it every time. So I was able to teach a couple of my guys, and now they actually just teach the class, and I don't have to teach every class.
So what kind of time investment as a whole? So each person invests X amount of hours on their own, and then the class is how many hours on every couple of weeks?
Yeah, so basically there's a module, they watch the module, maybe spend an hour on the workbook exercise, so maybe 2 hours outside of the classroom and then an hour inside the conference room.
I just had a crazy idea.
What do you got?
Okay.
I just had a crazy idea for nails. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I wish that, it was valuable enough to just pay Cory to teach my people. Right? No,
yeah.
Basically the guy's running a lighting school. How many people have you put through LS1 now?
About 30.
So 30 people. That's a lot, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, you putting that's a lot for the lighting business. I'm sure that's one of the largest, one single company commitments to LS1. It's got to be one of the largest. I don't know who's the biggest. At one time when we first launched it, there was tons going through, right?
I think some of the bigger companies that have hundreds of people, like Voss or whatever, have put.
But they're not necessarily doing what Cory's doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I'm thinking is what if Nail just did it with the virtual studio, and people could, instead of doing LS1 on their own, they could do LS1, and some of the money went to Pay Lighting Unlimited to run the course in the virtual studio, and 8 people came in and they did the module. That would be a fantastic idea. I don't know if you guys want to do it, but I mean, so many people out there, they get LS1, and I've kind of copied your model where, I go in the classroom and we into the boardroom and we sit down and we go through the modules and all this sort of stuff. But you've perfected this to an art. I mean, if you, in the remote, you look at the technology we have, we're basically having a conversation almost in person. over the internet. So I don't know if that would be possible for Nailed, because I think a lot of people get onto that LS1, like your first employee that went through it. He's on his own. Paul Hafner tells you, hey, why don't you run it like a class, and it works wonders for you. I think that would be an interesting idea for Nailed, to run a virtual classroom where people came in on a weekly basis and went through the LS1 program.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. Anytime you can have that extra follow-up, and that's where I was a little skeptical with the program at first. Is like, well, it's all online, and I don't know if I'll have the time. But I did that. I took Cory's advice on a couple of our employees, and it helped a ton. But you need somebody within your company to be able to.
We have actually talked to Paul about this. The issue is time, and health, So.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, if Paul could do it, holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Why is it important to learn the legacy light sources, Cory?
Yeah, so all the new LED technology is based off of the old legacy part numbers. So people don't understand where the part numbers come from. They have to understand the genesis of where it comes from, the laws, the Energy Independent Security Act. Why is a 60-watt bulb now a 52-watt bulb? It doesn't make any sense. And now an 8-watt, how does an 8-watt replace a 52 or a 60? Where does that come from? Why is it a BR30? Why did they come up with BR30? Because in like the 70s or 80s, they had some law and they said 75 R30 is illegal. You can't make that. And the light bulb people got smart and said, hey, we're going to make a BR30. So it's a different light bulb completely. So they bulged out the neck and made a BR30. So it got past the law. Just stupid stuff, but it's like, why is it there? Helps you understand where this stuff's coming from.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting point. So, I think I said in the conclusion of the last episode with Jaga, I said that, Karl Marx, and that's a toxic name in the States, I think, but he said that history repeats itself. First is farce, then is tragedy. I think, when you're looking at the legacy components, and we were talking with Jaga, they're trying to make form factors for LED fixtures that all manufacturers in the world can adopt, so that the components are then interreplaceable, right? From, say, a Cooper, vapor tight fixture, the board is the same mechanical parts as a Cooper one and a Lithonia one and what have you, right? And it's interesting because we were talking to him, and he says this is going to drive innovation, right? Yeah. And when we were discussing that, I realized that the reason why the LED adoption for retrofit was so fast, is because there's so many damn 65 BR30s out there that all you have to do is make an LED BR30 and everybody knows what to do with it, right? You can make a 4-foot tube, a T8 tube. If you make it in that form factor, you have billions of sockets to put it into. Right? So if you don't know the legacy technology, you don't have an understanding of why the LEDs are being made the way they are. Like, for example, remember when they came up with the LED tube, it was 180 degree, right? Now you think, why would you waste light coming out of the back of an LED tube? Why would you do that? It lowers the coefficient of utilization. I think that's what it is, right? If you have light coming out the back, it's like a waste. Well, the problem with that is, if you put those 180 degree T8s into 2x4 troffer, the troffer looks dark. Like when you're walking through,
parabolic.
You're like, if you put it in a parabolic, it'll look better. But if you're walking through an office and you had retrofitted to the 180 degrees, you're going to have these dark lines in between the LED tubes in the fixture.
Right.
And it's going to look kind of odd to you that light source is not fully illuminated. So I think it's important to understand legacy technologies.
Yeah. I would agree on that. And I think so. Do you start your employees day one on that, Cory? Like a brand new employee?
I wait a week. I wait a week to see if they'll work out, but then I start them in.
And then you've told me in the past, but what do you do if they're halfway through and they're not really taking it serious?
Then I fire them.
Right there. Save you money.
You can tell the guy's a moron. You get him out of there. Then you talk to Nailed, and you already bought the license, so you can just change it out for the next guy. So you're just committing a license or whatever, and Nailed will work with you to
Nailed changes up. Yeah, Nailed will change it up. How does it? So you put obviously salespeople, LS1, but why are you putting your accountant through it? Why are you putting your warehouse people through it?
They talk to the customers, and they got to know oh, the guy says my 65 BR30 didn't work. Well, he's got to know what a 65 BR30 is to help talk to the customer. Or the driver, he can potentially see an opportunity at a warehouse and say, hey, I could retrofit that. Hey, sales guy, get out here. Check it out. The accountant could try to fix whatever problem.
So you've got the LS1 program under control, and you're starting to do LS2 as well with your employees?
Yeah, so I've probably put I don't know, four people through the LS2, and one guy actually went on to get his LC from that.
So do you see that like a natural stepping stone then?
Yeah, so well, at the Nail show, I know we talked about it. I think there's a gap between something that's missing between LS1 is like 0 to 6 months of learning, and then LS2 is way beyond that. It's probably 6 years forward. So I think the industry is missing something that's like LS1.5 or something that's in between that. That's like sales tactics, auditing, fixture identification. What's a strip? What's a wrap? What's a shunted socket? What's an unshunted socket? What's a photocell? What's rope light?
What's a K12 lens? What's a K12 lens versus opal and all this sort of stuff? Yeah.
Correct. So we're actually talking about developing an LS1.5. It's something, it's going to be a fixture identification and salesmanship training and auditing tool. Something in between. And then the LS2 is, I think you even said it, Greg. It was like how to become a lighting consultant. And then the next step would be to become an LC. So you go from, what'd you call it? Lighting awareness, lighting sales and tactics, lighting consultant, and then you get your LC. So it's a path from nothing to LC. Yeah,
there is a space between that component. So I think LS1 does handle the light source as well, but it doesn't handle the lighting accessories to the light source as well.
And fixtures.
Yeah, fixtures.
The stuff you run into when you're actually in the field.
Yeah, like, can you replace this transformer?
Huh?
Yeah. This lens.
What's a transformer? Right?
Yeah. I got this broken lens in my, 3 broken lenses, and they're some weird shape. Like even the shapes of some of those wrap lenses, you could have a whole module on the different shapes of wrap lenses, So interesting.
It's kind of going away, but yeah.
Right. So, is your plan to have all of your sales reps then become LC? Or are you kind of?
Yeah, so right now we have 2 LCs. I took the test last year. There was a guy that we hired. He had his LC already, and then I have currently 3 guys going through the LC pro. Going to take the LC prep class this year. So the test is in November.
Okay.
They're doing LS2 right now, and then they're going to take the LC this November. So the idea is to have an LC factory of smart guys out there selling, lighting upgrades.
So give us the LS2 rundown on how that is similar to LS1 modules.
Well, yeah, it's probably there's a couple ways to do it. We've revamped it because some people don't. There's different modules. So the way it starts out is I'm not as good as this one, but it's just what's this course about. There's a module on how to read the IES handbook. What's the IES handbook? Different codes is one of the modules. Different tools and techniques like what's the lumen method? What are photometrics? How to what's the space by space method? The point method. What is ASHRAE? Where go read the ASHRAE module. That's go read the ASHRAE handbook. It's and then it kind of culminates and you do an actual project using all the tools and techniques that you learn. You pick a project, like I have a guy that picked a National Guard facility and he's redesigned the layout. Another girl is, she went to a retail boot store that had just strips going down the aisles. And, so the idea typically should go in and say, hey, I'm just going to replace the bulbs 1 for 1. So you have a TA tube, I'm going to put in a TA tube. So the idea is that she walks into the boot store and says, instead of having these strips, maybe they want to redesign the boot store to sell more boots. As opposed to just walking in and replacing light bulbs, you're actually going in and helping the guy sell more boots. So maybe on the boot bubble stores.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because that plays into. I know you're also in your state. I was going to say province. In your state, I know you're also a leader in connected lighting as well, Cory. Tell us a little bit about how many connected jobs you've done and what technology you're using and how you've trained your people to do that.
Yeah, so again, we part of it we got lucky. We hired some smart guys that just kind of knew this stuff. But we've done like a couple state buildings with wireless technology. I think we used LG Electronics. They have a wireless integrated system that you can program with the Android tablet, and it has daylight harvesting, scheduling. Occupancy sensing, all that type of stuff, and commission very easy, and you know
How many people
I
do you
don't
think in Arizona can offer that kind of a service? Are you guys really out in front and leaders in that?
I would think the rep agencies can do it. There's a couple rep agencies out here that are pretty
Yeah, okay.
sharp, but the distributors, none, I would think, could do that. But
And it's
typically the rep agencies are specifying that type of stuff, but we're going out and designing our own discretionary business jobs.
and this whole educational process started with LS1 in the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Yeah.
Correct.
So people listening to this podcast, we're probably gonna have a couple thousand people listen to this thing. Cory's really created probably one of the fastest growing companies in nailed right now. And I think it comes down to education. I really admire Cory for that.
Definitely.
You're certainly the best at it. Cory, let's go back to you being the president of Nailed and that journey. I think that Nailed is really a educational outlier in this business, in a sense. What distributors have learned through distribution and becoming better at distribution is important to the industry as a whole.
Yep.
But I think that it's kind of like one of those knowledges that's being lost now. Like, how many LED sellers out there in the field are just thinking one for one? See a T8, change a T8.
Everybody.
Majority.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
And what was the guy we were talking to? Was talking about the 330-300?
Dan Ryan.
Dan Ryan.
Yeah, yep.
So when your person walks into that boot store, she's going from 3 to 30 to 300 a square foot.
Yeah.
Correct.
Value for the customer, right?
Correct.
And that's an interest. That's where this industry is going. And Mark Lean was talking about how this industry is going to be the most profitable it's ever been. And I think a lot of people aren't sure about that comment, but it sounds like Cory Schneider is.
And what it comes down to is the education. Having that background is what it sounds
For
like.
sure, but there's still, it's just shaking out. The industry, we were all at Life Fair last week. It's shaking out. We don't know how it's going to go. The industry thinks there's going to be this, the industry, the engineers for the big companies have designed this IoT monster and all these data collection tools, but the customers are not asking for it. So I think the manufacturers have designed all these products, these IoT products, but who's buying them? Who's doing them? I think one guy said, Phillips, I think, told me they had Deloitte Touche or something they had a 6-story building or something like that, and they had asset tracking on it, and were able to reduce their footprint from 4 stories to, or from 6 stories to 4 stories, and then leased out the 2 stories. So they had like $1 million payback for doing that asset tracking. But does the guy down the street over here, does he really care about asset tracking? No. The guy with the 10,000 square foot building in Scottsdale could care less about asset tracking. So
I think
am I really going to sell asset tracking?
99% of people don't know what asset tracking is.
At this point. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking Deloitte and Touche is a bunch of bean counters.
Right.
So they're like, well, let's track the assets. Okay, we're going to use this to track the assets. They're bean counters. Most people are thinking about revenue generation, right? So when in their business, so some guy that's let's say he's got a third-party logistics. Well, actually, that's a beautiful example of using this technology. Would be third-party logistics. If you could deploy it to help them know which rack aisles are being used more, which stuff's being grabbed more. I just don't know if it's almost like you're in a situation where when you talk about, you're like, I'll give you the ability to do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you see it.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to get that $300 a square foot, you have to go in there and tell them how they're going to track the assets and how they're going to reduce their costs.
And you think that I'm going to do a better job than Amazon or Google or Cisco or one of these guys? I'm just a lighting guy from Scottsdale. I got no shot versus Amazon and Google. And Cisco. These companies are going to come in and buy up Acuity for nothing.
Yeah, the lighting business is like a flea for them. It's like the problem I see, like this whole Internet of Things and the whole Lux as a service and models and stuff like that. the lighting guys might be commoditized. Like if Greg's like,
Right.
you know, well, we need lighting experts to do it, and we're going to make the money because we're the experts. But they might say, no, we take your expertise for granted, actually. And if you're not an expert, you're going to get into legal trouble with us because you have to provide this lux. I know that the Amsterdam airport has a lux as a service model.
Mhm.
So they pay for foot candles, or they pay for lux, a certain amount of lux in all their spaces. At least that's what I've been told. So there are people that are doing this. I'm not sure that you're right. Like it is a company like a Google Android that builds they have that Google Home box or that Alexa thing or Andrea thing or whatever that is. Are they
Alexa,
just are they just gonna deploy that and then everything in between that is a commodity? Like, if you make a handset and it deploys Android, Google gets all the profits and the handset maker makes 8% gross profit.
Well, let me ask you guys something. Is lighting more confusing now than it was 5 years ago?
Much more confusing.
Much more confusing. So do they need an expert who can narrow this down? Right.
Yeah.
So if these companies come in to an industry that's already confusing enough that even experts are, it takes us a long time to learn this, are they going to jump right in and say, hey, this is easy, we're going to make it like this?
I think they're going to have a lot of burnouts.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to go through everything we've gone through for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious how, but there's a sense that there's an ominous. There was at Frankfurt, the light build in Germany was just so huge, and so exploding with new things that you couldn't. The feeling of the show was really. It was kind of like you're in a show and it's this huge show and there's so many people there and so many buildings. You kind of got this overwhelming sense of impending change, but there was a vibe there. I felt Light Fair was a little dull and a little bit ominous. There was like
Light Fair was just okay, I would say.
Yeah, it was kind of like there was less of an excitement there. I don't know. Did you feel the same thing?
I felt that. Yeah, I mean everything. It's kind of like when LED first came out. There's all these advancements. Now it's kind of stabilizing. We're seeing that, and everybody's kind of having similar product. They're doing little tweaks on it, and the one thing that stood out is like the color tuning and things that whether that really
but I think
anywhere.
it's becoming like last year at Light Fair, it was all color tuning and horticultural.
Yeah.
Right. It was like everyone was jacked up on the color tuning and all sorts of stuff. And now it's like, well, I don't know if there's that many applications for color tuning. How many people actually want to tune their lights?
So here, I'll give you a good example. So with color tuning, I went to the Acuity booth actually, and I was talking to the guy about color tuning. And the big thing with color tuning is that it's supposed to be in schools and it's supposed to be good for kids, right? So when they go to school, Acuity came out with this color tuning thing. And you're supposed to blast the guy with the 5,000K when he wakes up to get the kid going, and then after kind of cool it down throughout the day or something like that. And then when he gets back from lunch, you blast it up again and wake him up, and then cool it down or whatever. So apparently they've been approaching schools for the last year, and they've had 2 or 3 wins or whatever. But basically, the guy said we didn't do a good job. We couldn't sell this product, this color tuning product. So then their new pitch at Light Fair was saying that, hey, we couldn't figure out the need for this thing. So we got this color tuning thing, and we tried to sell it to schools, and it didn't really work. And the guy's pitch was, hey, we're going to go after the PTA. We're going to tell parents that their kids need this because it's good for their health. So the Acuity's pitch is now to parents. We're going to go approach PTA and say, hey, we're going to create the need from the parents, because going to the schools direct, the schools didn't care. But they think the moms will care that it's healthier for the kids to have tunable light in their classrooms, because
the dads won't.
Facilities people didn't care. Right.
The dads won't care.
But who says that it's healthier? Like the science behind it isn't necessarily
So
proven.
let me jump in with two things. First of all, half the school boards in America are broke. First problem. Okay,
Yeah.
They can't even pay their teachers. I mean, teachers in America. So a Canadian teacher
Arizona, they had a 20% raise they just fought for.
Yeah, so Canadian teachers make double what American teachers make. Probably triple, actually, if you consider their benefits and their pension and all. In fact, being a teacher in Ontario is probably the best job, including time off, retirement benefits, medical benefits, and salary. It's probably the best job you could possibly have. You get Christmas off, March break off, summer off. You make a nice salary, and you can retire when you're 55, and you get 80% of your salary till you die. Like, it's one of the best jobs you could indexed to inflation. Yep. It's one of the best jobs you could have. But anyway, long story short, America doesn't pay their teachers enough. or I think they don't, or maybe they don't. I don't know.
They don't.
Don't get anyone mad.
My wife's a teacher, so they don't.
Right. Okay. So teachers should get a raise. So where's the money going to go? It's going to go to unproven tunable lighting that nobody really has any science on, or maybe putting the kids back in the classroom.
Circadian. You got to make sure it's circadian light. So
okay. Well, hang on here a second. Do
you remember? So that's your Mariana girl.
Okay. Right. No, Mariana. Hey, listen, Dr. Figueroa's great. She helped the Alzheimer's patients, but that's all she was willing to say. Mm-hmm. So she came on the show and she said, yeah. This is an emerging science, and we've proven that you can help Alzheimer's patients. That's it. Nothing else. Okay, and she's the leader in this. But here's the next point. Do you guys remember the seasonal affective disorder in the late 90s?
Yeah.
Right? That was the first health thing that came out, right? And so people were like, yeah, buy these change your T12 cool whites to these full spectrum tubes, and you'll cure seasonal affective disorder. Well, it turns out that you have to stand in front of a lighting source that's emitting 10,000 lux on your face to make any difference at all. That's a hell of a lot of light.
It's a high bay in your face.
That's a high bay light in your face. Now, who wants that in their eyes? The second thing was that, do you remember those little paracubes? Remember in the early 90s, they had those little tiny 3/4 inch or half-inch paracube lenses? Mm-hmm. Do you remember paracube, the tiny paracubes? Well, what happens with those is they send the light straight down. So what happened in a lot of these offices was that they had no vertical foot candles on the wall. So people are sitting in front of an old CRT screen that's blasting it with nasty glare and blinking on and off, and they look up at the walls, and all the walls are dark in their office. Mm-hmm. And they believe that that was causing the seasonal affective disorder or this depression. And the lights, the actual quality of the light or color of the light had absolutely nothing to do with it. Oh. And it turned out that it was no vertical foot candles, which, hey, the IES doesn't even measure vertical foot candles. Last time I was told by Butters, I think it was Butters, that they don't even look at, or maybe it was Randy Reed, they don't even look at vertical foot candles. Take a light meter and put it on the wall, not on the work plane. Who cares? Who walks around going like this? Nobody. Everybody's looking up like this. Vertical foot candles are so important, dude. If the wall looks dark, but you have 100 lux right here, you're going to feel like you're in a dark space.
So your point behind all this is that...
It's all BS, dude.
Exactly.
They don't know what's causing these problems.
Yeah.
Or we think that if we blast kids with this 5,000 K light that's blinking on and off 100 times a second, mm-hmm. maybe that's... Who knows if it's good or bad?
Right. Yeah.
Tell me, you show me, if you can show me a double-blind replicated study which shows that, we had kids, look, Dr. Wilkins had one building identical to the other building. He put all rapid start T12 in one, mm-hmm. and he put all electronic ballast in the other, didn't tell anybody, or alternating floors or whatever he did. And he showed that the people in the T12 building had more headaches, more problems, or had more health problems than the people in the T8 building.
Yep.
He proved it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no proof for this stuff except for the Alzheimer's.
So,
anyway, there's my rant.
That's a good rant. We're all in agreement to some degree on that. But that's what I saw. A lot of controls is another thing that we keep talking about, and maybe to tie it into nailed is that lighting controls course. You want to touch on that some too, Cory?
Sure. So we had Craig DeLuey, who kind of wrote the book on controls. He helped us write this course. I haven't actually taken it, but it's actually we had Lutron and Craig DeLuey both help us write it, and it's basically intro to controls. It's all the different types, identifications, how they work, how to commission it. That's what it is.
And do you see that kind of as an in-between of LS1 and LS2, even though it's a whole separate animal than lighting? I mean, it should be a separate.
It's a separate thing. I mean, it's just they're different worlds. I mean, it's the AV type of world. Anybody in the AV space could take it. It's just a different type of guy.
Now they're meshing together, and that's kind of what I think is good about. So you started the podcast off saying that you don't know where Nailed's going to be, but it sounds like you do. We got a lot of education coming out.
There you go.
With that.
What we need is we need someone. We need to find a sponsor for this LS1.5.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was going to talk to a bunch of guys, GE, Philips, some of the big Halco, all those guys, and big supporters, Keystone. See if they have interest, in supporting us.
Yeah, I know. It would be great. So I think that's a pot. Aside from my crazy rant.
Yeah.
But I think it's true though. Come back to me here. I know you guys are thinking Colligan's on a rant again.
Yeah.
But I don't see any proof, man. Maybe there's proof out there. If you're out there and you have proof, if you're listening to this and you're thinking that call again, he's full of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You don't know anything about you don't know anything about color tuning. Listen, come on the show and show us some proof, and we'll put it out there for you, and we'll make sure. I'll sell color tuning all day long, as long as I know that it actually does what it says it's going to do.
Yeah,
that's a podcast,
All
everybody.
right.
Thanks for coming on the show, Cory.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no
Hey,
problem.
no problem, guys.
Yep.
All right. Have fun.
Bye for now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye.
See ya.
Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com, baby. KeystoneTech.com. We're talking about their smart, safe LED emergency backup lighting solutions. Come on, Gregor. Tell us all about it.
I think it's a great product. It's something that really was needed in the marketplace. And that's what Keystone does better than anybody else, I think, is they listen to the people that actually are in the market and they implement products that make sense.
So you told them about this problem and Keystone made it for you.
I might have been one of the few or one of the hundreds or whatever it was, but I did tell them about that problem, and they came out with some options for you. You can see there's a kit option where you can still do a bypass ballast tube, which is a lot of people in our market are doing. And you can make it a kit with a LED module actually built on.
So it runs off a generator or whatever?
It runs off the actual driver that you put in. It's a whole backup system where you can still bypass any need for a ballast, and you can do that. In the past, you had to have the ballast operating on the tube for these tubes.
So it's a battery with a driver that runs a bypass tube?
Yes.
Ooh.
Well, that's one. And then they also have a kit where they actually give you a little LED chipboard. You can see it on screen there.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yep. And that is your emergency light. And they have two options, I think, an 800 lumen and a 1200 lumen or something like that, depending on how much light you need.
So you got to go to KeystoneTech.com, man.
They give it to you.
KEYSTONETECH.com, baby. KeystoneTech.com. And remember, this episode and every episode is sponsored by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. That's NAILD.org. For more information, hey, man, we just spent an whole episode talking about what, son? What? We're talking about LS1. Cory is the master of LS1.
He is.
I think he might own it at this point. It might belong to Lighting Unlimited. LS1 belongs to Cory, and LS2, of course, but we need that LS1.5 at some point. We got to get some money, Greg, to develop that LS1.5.
That's true. For the record, he doesn't actually own it, but he does run it better than anybody else. The system he came up with that you heard on this show was awesome.
Everyone's copied him. As soon as they hear what Cory's been doing with LS1, everyone does it that way because Cory is the man when it comes to lighting education and new people in the business. That guy's trained. You go to his shop, he's trained so many different people in LS1.
From different backgrounds.
Different backgrounds, yeah. And he puts them through, and next thing you know, hey, you know what? He should get like a star from the Economical Training Association of Phoenix, Arizona or something for giving these people some, a meaningful job, dude.
Sounds like you made up another compliance name or
something like that anyway. And of course, folks, we were brought to you by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, who Cory is the president of. Thanks for listening to episode 27. Get a grip on lighting.